The sound of my heels echoed through the empty marble hallway, muffled only by the sound of my own sobbing. I had my resignation letter in my hand, crumpled and wet with tears. I thought I could handle his coldness, his silence, and his impossible demands. But tonight, Alexander Miller had crossed a line. As I reached the elevator, a strong, gloved hand slammed against the door, stopping it from closing. I looked up through blurred vision to see him, his chest heaving, his blue eyes no longer icy, but burning with a terrifying mix of regret and possessiveness. "You are not leaving me, Elena," he growled, his voice trembling. "Not now. Not ever. Let's go back to 6 months ago, when I was just a nobody in his empire. I was the girl who stayed in the shadows, the one who worked until her eyes burned just to avoid going home to an empty apartment. Alexander Miller was a myth to us, a man born with a silver spoon but a heart of stone. He was the CEO who fired people for wearing the wrong shade of tie. I lived in constant fear of his gaze, never imagining that the man who didn't even know my name was secretly watching my every move from his surveillance monitors. It was a rainy Tuesday, around 2 a.m. I was the only soul left on the 42nd floor, buried under a mountain of files that my manager had dumped on me. The silence was deafening until the heavy mahogany doors of the private elevator groaned open. I froze. Alexander walked out, his expensive suit jacket draped over his arm, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked exhausted, yet dangerously handsome. He stopped at my desk, his shadow towering over me. I couldn't even breathe. "The world is asleep, Miss Woods," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "Why are you still carving your life away for a company that doesn't know you exist?" I tried to stand up, but my legs felt like lead. I have to finish this, sir. It's for the morning meeting." He leaned down, placing both hands on my desk, trapping me between his arms. The scent of expensive cigars and rain-washed cedarwood overwhelmed my senses. He reached out and tilted my chin up with his thumb. His skin was warm, sending a jolt of electricity straight to my heart. "Look at me when I speak to you," he whispered. Our eyes locked, and for a split second, the mask of the Ice King slipped, revealing a hunger that terrified me. The next morning, I didn't get a pink slip. I got a promotion. I was moved from the crowded basement office to a desk right outside his glass suite. My colleagues looked at me with pure hatred. They whispered that I must have offered something to him that night. Their words stung, but I had no choice. I needed the money for my mother's medical bills. But working for Alexander was a nightmare. He was more demanding than ever, making me stay late every single night, forcing me to be his shadow. Little did I know, he wasn't just my boss, he was becoming my captor. One evening, while Alexander was in a board meeting, he asked me to find a specific file in his desk. As I searched through the heavy drawers, I found a small leather-bound notebook. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it and felt my heart stop. Inside were sketches, hand-drawn portraits of a woman. My breath hitched. It was me. Me drinking coffee, me crying in the break room, me sleeping at my desk. He hadn't just noticed me, he had been studying me for months. "Do you like what you see?" His voice came from the doorway, cold and sharp. I slammed the drawer shut, my face burning with shame. He walked toward me slowly, like a predator cornering its prey. I was just looking for the file, Mr. Miller," I stammered, backing away until I hit the floor-to-ceiling window. He didn't stop until he was inches away. He didn't look angry, he looked obsessed. "I've watched you for 300 days, Elena. I know what you like, what you fear, and how you look when you think no one is watching. You aren't just an employee. You are my muse. From that day on, the tension between us became unbearable. He started buying me things, expensive dresses, jewelry, even a new car, all under the guise of work expenses. He demanded I attend every dinner, every gala, and every late-night meeting by his side. He was slowly cutting me off from the rest of the world, building a golden cage around me. My friends stopped calling, and my family thought I had changed. I was becoming his, and the scariest part was, a part of me didn't want to run away. One night, his driver was unavailable, and Alexander insisted on driving me home himself. The rain was pouring down, blurring the city lights into a neon haze. We sat in a heavy, suffocating silence. He was driving his black Lamborghini, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Suddenly, he pulled over on a deserted road. "I can't do this anymore," he muttered under his breath. Before I could ask what he meant, he turned toward me, his eyes dark with a desire so raw it made me tremble. He reached across the seat, his hand cupping the back of my neck, pulling me closer. I could feel his warm breath on my lips. "Tell me to stop, Elena," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Tell me you hate me, and I'll let you go." I wanted to say it. I wanted to scream that he was a monster for controlling my life. But as his lips brushed against mine, all the words died in my throat. I didn't pull away. I leaned in, surrendering to the man who was both my savior and my greatest mistake. Just as his lips were about to claim mine, a bright flash of lightning illuminated the car, followed by a deafening roar of thunder. I flinched, pulling back. The spell was broken. Alexander's hand dropped from my neck, and he turned back to the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might break. "I shouldn't have done that," he snapped, his voice returning to that icy, professional tone that hurt more than his silence. He drove the rest of the way in a silence so heavy it felt like I couldn't breathe. When we reached my apartment, he didn't even look at me. "Be at the office at 7 a.m. Don't be late." The next morning, I arrived early, my heart heavy with confusion. But Alexander was different. He didn't look at me, didn't speak to me, and sent all his instructions through cold, typed emails. It was as if the night in the car had never happened. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Was I just a game to him? By noon, Sarah, the manager who hated me, walked past my desk with a smirk. "Hear the news. Alexander's ex-fiancée is back from Paris. They're meeting for lunch." My world tilted. Suddenly, the sketches in his drawer felt like a lie. I was filing some papers when a woman walked in. She was everything I wasn't, sophisticated, wearing Chanel, and smelling of expensive French perfume. Her name was Isabella. She didn't even knock, she walked straight into Alexander's office. Through the glass wall, I saw her lean down and kiss his cheek. Alexander didn't pull away. I stared at my computer screen, the letters blurring as hot tears stung my eyes. I was just the office girl, a temporary distraction for a bored king. That afternoon, Alexander finally called me into his office. Isabella was sitting on his desk, laughing. "Elena, bring us 2 coffees," he said without looking up. He was using my first name in front of her, but as if I were a servant. I felt a surge of anger I had never felt before. I brought the coffee, but as I set it down, my hand shook, spilling a few drops on Isabella's silk dress. She shrieked, calling me incompetent. I expected Alexander to defend me, but he just looked at me coldly. "Clean it up and leave, Woods." I didn't clean it. I dropped the cloth, turned around, and walked out of the office. I didn't stop at my desk. I grabbed my bag and headed for the stairs. I couldn't do this anymore. I was tired of being his toy, his muse one day and his servant the next. I ran down the stairs, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I reached the lobby and burst out into the crowded street, wanting to disappear into the city. But I didn't get far. A black car pulled up beside me, screeching its tires. The door opened, and Alexander stepped out. He looked furious. "Get in the car, Elena," he commanded. People were starting to stare. "No. I quit. I'm done with your games, Alexander," I shouted. He didn't argue. He stepped forward, grabbed me by the waist, and literally lifted me off the ground, throwing me into the back seat. He locked the doors before I could jump out. "You don't quit until I say you're finished," he growled as he got into the driver's seat. He didn't drive me home. He drove to a private residential building, his penthouse. He dragged me up to the top floor. The view was breathtaking, but I was too angry to care. "Why am I here?" I demanded, my voice trembling. He paced the room like a caged tiger. "Isabella is nothing. She's a business arrangement my father wants. But you are the only thing that keeps me sane in that goddamn office." He slammed his hand against the wall, his eyes searching mine. For the first time, I saw a crack in his armor. He looked tired, lonely, and desperate. "I acted cold because I'm terrified of how much power you have over me," he confessed, stepping closer. "Every time you smile at someone else, I want to burn this city down. Every time you cry because of me, I hate myself." He reached out, his fingers trembling as they touched my hair. "Don't leave me, Elena. I'll give you anything. Just stay." He walked over to his desk and pulled out a document. It wasn't a work contract. It was a deed to a small art gallery, the dream I had mentioned to him months ago. "It's yours," he said. "On one condition. You stay by my side. Not as an employee, but as mine." I looked at the paper, then at him. It was a golden cage, but the bars were made of everything I had ever wanted. I realized then that I didn't just love the gallery, I was falling for the monster who bought it for me. I looked into his eyes and saw the raw, unfiltered obsession. I didn't care about the consequences anymore. I reached up, cupping his face, and pulled him down to me. This time, there was no lightning, no phone calls, and no interruptions. His lips met mine in a kiss that tasted of longing, possessiveness, and a dark, dangerous promise. As we pulled apart, he whispered against my lips, "You're mine now, Elena." And I never let go of what belongs to me. I woke up in a room that felt too large and too expensive. The silk sheets of Alexander's penthouse felt cool against my skin, but my heart was racing. Everything had changed in a single night. I looked at the contract on the bedside table, the art gallery. It was my dream, but it felt like a heavy weight. When I walked into the kitchen, Alexander was standing by the window, already in a sharp suit. He looked back at me, and for a second, his eyes softened. "Good morning, Elena," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "From today, the world will know you belong to me. Are you ready for that?" Walking into the office on Alexander's arm was like walking into a battlefield. The silence was deafening as we walked through the lobby. He didn't hide it. His hand was firmly placed on the small of my back, a clear sign of possession. As soon as he went into a meeting, the whispers started. "She's a gold digger," I heard Sarah whisper in the break room. "She traded her dignity for a promotion." I kept my head high, but inside, I was crumbling. Was I really his partner, or just his latest acquisition? One evening, while Alexander was away on a business trip, I stayed late at the penthouse. I accidentally stumbled upon a locked door in the hallway. My curiosity, which usually got me into trouble, flared up. I found the spare key in his study and opened it. The room was dark, but when I flicked the switch, I gasped. It wasn't a room for sketches. It was filled with files on my family, my mother's hospital bills, my father's old debts, even my childhood photos. He hadn't just watched me, he had investigated every corner of my life before we even met. I was still in the room when I heard the front door open. Alexander was home early. He found me standing there, holding a file about my mother. His face went pale, then instantly turned into a mask of cold fury. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Why, Alexander? Why do you have my mother's medical records?" I screamed. He stepped closer, his shadow engulfing me. "Because I paid them, Elena. Every single bill. You didn't get that promotion by luck. I created it so I could save you without you knowing." I felt like the floor had been pulled from under me. Every success I thought I had achieved was just a gift from him. I felt humiliated. "So, I'm just a charity project to you?" I asked, my voice breaking. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip tight. "No. You were drowning, and I was the only one who could pull you out. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because I couldn't stand the thought of you suffering." I pushed him away, feeling more trapped in his love than I ever did in his office. The next day, a man arrived at the office who made Alexander look like a saint. It was his father, Silas Miller. He was a terrifying man with eyes like flint. He walked into Alexander's office and didn't even acknowledge me as a human being. Through the glass, I saw them arguing. Silas pointed at me and then slammed a photograph on the desk. It was a picture of Alexander and Isabella. The message was clear: my presence was a threat to the Miller legacy. Silas cornered me in the elevator as I was leaving. "You're a pretty girl, Elena," he said, his voice like a snake's hiss. "But Alexander is meant for empires, not for little girls with art dreams. If you truly love him, you'll leave before I have to destroy everything he's built to get rid of you." He left me standing there, trembling. I realized then that my love for Alexander could be the very thing that ruins him. That night, I received a mysterious text. It was from Isabella. She wanted to meet at a quiet bar downtown. I knew I shouldn't go, but I needed answers. When I arrived, she looked at me with pity. "Alexander doesn't love people, Elena. He collects them. He did the same to me. He fixes your problems so you become dependent on him. Once you have nowhere else to go, he'll grow bored." Her words felt like ice water in my veins. Was his protection just a form of control? When I returned to the penthouse, Alexander was waiting with a bottle of wine. He tried to pull me into a hug, but I stiffened. "Did you talk to Isabella?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. He knew. He was always watching. "She told me the truth, Alexander. You don't want a partner, you want a puppet." He slammed the glass down, shattering it. "I am trying to protect you from people who want to hurt you," he roared. "The only person hurting me right now is you." I shouted back. I couldn't stay there. Not while I felt like I was being watched 24/7. While Alexander was in the shower, I packed a small bag. I didn't take the jewelry, the expensive clothes, or the deed to the gallery. I left everything behind except the clothes I wore when I first started working for him. I slipped out of the penthouse and into the rainy night, leaving my phone on the kitchen counter. For the first time in months, I was invisible again. But as I looked back at the glowing tower, I knew the Ice King wouldn't let his muse stay lost for long. I was back in a tiny, cramped motel room on the outskirts of the city. The walls were thin, and the smell of cheap detergent was a harsh reminder of the life I had before Alexander. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, waiting for the door to burst open. I knew him. He had resources, money, and power. But as the sun rose and no one came, a different kind of fear settled in my heart. Was I so replaceable that he didn't even care that I was gone? 3 days passed. I stayed inside, living on black coffee and bread. I checked the news on an old TV. Miller International stocks plummet, the headline read. There were rumors that the CEO had stopped showing up to board meetings. My heart ached. I wanted him to move on, but the thought of him breaking down because of me was unbearable. I realized that while I was afraid of his obsession, I was even more afraid of his absence. On the 4th day, there was a knock at my door. It wasn't Alexander. It was his driver, Marcus, the only person Alexander truly trusted. He looked exhausted. "Miss Woods, you need to come with me," he said, his voice cracking. "He hasn't slept or eaten since you left. He's destroying himself, and his father is moving to take over the company today. If you don't stop him, he'll lose everything." I didn't think twice. I jumped into the car. As we sped toward the Miller Tower, my anger had vanished, replaced by a desperate need to see him. The lobby was in chaos. Lawyers and executives were running around. I pushed past them, heading straight for the private elevator. I still had my old employee badge. As the doors opened to the top floor, I saw a scene of total destruction. Lamps were broken, papers were scattered everywhere, and the smell of expensive whiskey was heavy in the air. Alexander was sitting on the floor by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the city with hollow eyes. He looked like a ghost of the man I knew. He didn't even look up when I entered. "Go away, Marcus," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I told you, don't come back without her." I stepped into the light. "I'm here, Alexander." He froze. It was as if time had stopped. He stood up slowly, his movements shaky. When he finally looked at me, I saw a vulnerability that broke my heart. "Is this another dream?" he asked, reaching out but afraid to touch me. I took his hand and pressed it against my cheek. "It's me. I'm real." In an instant, his grief turned into a desperate, possessive embrace. He pulled me so close I could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. "Never, never do that again," he sobbed into my shoulder. "I don't care about the company. I don't care about the gallery. I just need you to breathe." The doors burst open. It was Silas Miller, followed by a team of lawyers. "This is enough, Alexander. You're being removed as CEO for being mentally unfit," his father shouted. Alexander didn't flinch. He stood tall, keeping one arm firmly around my waist. The Ice King was back, but this time, he wasn't cold, he was lethal. "You want the chair, father? Take it," Alexander said, throwing his keys on the desk. "But Elena stays with me. And if you ever touch her or her family again, I will release the files I have on your illegal offshore accounts. Try me." Silas turned pale. He realized he had lost. He had underestimated the power of Alexander's obsession. He walked out without a word, his empire-building days over. The room became quiet. Alexander looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "I'm not a CEO anymore, Elena. I'm just a man with a lot of money and a lot of flaws. Can you still love a man like that?" I looked at him, the man who had watched me from the shadows, who had tried to buy my love, and who had ultimately sacrificed his throne for me. "I don't want the billionaire," I whispered. I want the man who sketched me when he thought I wasn't looking. We walked out of that building hand in hand, leaving the corporate world behind. We didn't go to the penthouse. We went to a small house by the beach, where the only thing that mattered was the sound of the waves and the warmth of his hand in mine. A year later, my art gallery finally opened. It wasn't a gift from a boss, it was a partnership between two people who had survived the storm. As the sun set on the opening night, Alexander stood behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist. He kissed the top of my head and whispered, "I told you on that first night. I never let go of what belongs to me." I smiled, leaning back into him. I wasn't his captive anymore. I was his queen.